In 2022, a peculiar and tragic case unfolded involving individuals from multiple nations. This case happened in 2009 in Turkey, where 20-year-old Russian native Ekaterina Bulgova, born in Leningrad on May 13, 1989, was vacationing with her family. It was there that she encountered Walter Baumann, a German citizen 13 years her senior. Walter, having been born in Kazakhstan, possessed fluency in Russian. Educated in Germany and financially stable, Walter's personal life was less fulfilling. He yearned for his ideal partner, but arguably didn't embody the characteristics of an ideal man himself. He resided with his parents, paid little attention to his appearance, dressed carelessly, and was generally perceived as unattractive. His interactions with women often occurred online, with a notable preference for Russian women. On one occasion, he traveled to Russia to meet a woman he had corresponded with extensively, only to find that she was unimpressed upon meeting him in person. Consequently, his friends were astonished by his holiday romance in Turkey. Ekaterina, young and beautiful, likely had numerous admirers, yet she inexplicably chose Walter. Their romance began conventionally, with two lonely individuals drawn to each other. Following their return to their respective countries, Ekaterina to Russia and Walter to Germany, they maintained contact through social media and lengthy phone conversations. He made frequent, costly trips to visit her in St. Petersburg. At the time, Ekaterina was in her second year of university studies there. Demonstrating serious intentions, Walter facilitated her transfer to Hamburg University. Thus, in 2010, Ekaterina left Russia for Germany, settling in the port city of Bremerhaven on the North Sea coast. In Bremerhaven, Ekaterina was regarded as intelligent, attractive, and cheerful. After her move, she remained in close contact with her family in Russia. In Germany, she continued her business administration studies, which she had begun in Russia. She enjoyed running and yoga, and often sought out quiet environments. A few months later, the couple married. Walter's friend Alexander described their wedding as extravagant. As a former wedding photographer, he had witnessed many ceremonies but considered Ekaterina the most radiant and joyful bride he had ever seen. The celebration undoubtedly incurred significant expense. The registry occurred at a lighthouse, after which they departed in a grand white horse-drawn carriage, an unprecedented sight in Germany. The wedding concluded well before dawn. Their wedding photograph captured a seemingly idyllic scene. Walter appeared supportive of his young wife, while Ekaterina embraced him tenderly, her smile conveying pure happiness. They seemed like a perfectly matched couple who had finally found each other, embarking on a blissful family life that appeared to be a fairy tale. However, the newlyweds moved into Walter's parents' home, marking the beginning of Ekaterina's difficulties in Germany. Living with Walter's parents proved challenging, and the fairy tale began to unravel. Walter's mother, Ludmila Baumann, was a formidable woman who would play a significant, if not central, role in the tragic conclusion of this story. Therefore, a brief introduction to her is warranted. Ludmila Baumann spent her initial 38 years in Kazakhstan. She was an exceptional student, progressing from assistant chemist-technologist to chemical engineer and then to middle school teacher. As 2017 dawned, marking Ekaterina's pregnancy, Walter, in a rare act of financial flexibility, decided to utilize a portion of his carefully guarded savings to purchase a house. This move offered an escape from his parents' residence, though the house hunt itself was protracted, driven by Walter's unwavering desire to minimize expenditure. Ekaterina harbored hopes that this change of scenery would positively impact their evolving relationship. Ludmila remained a constant presence in their new home, persistently meddling in every aspect of her son's life. Around this time, Ekaterina gave birth to their daughter, a joyous event that unfortunately exacerbated the tension between the spouses. Following their daughter's arrival, Walter's controlling nature intensified. He adopted a condescending tone towards Ekaterina and imposed restrictions on her independence, forbidding her from learning to drive. Furthermore, he insisted that their daughter be raised speaking only Russian, prohibiting Ekaterina from conversing with her in German. Ekaterina was bewildered by her husband's altered behavior. He became increasingly bitter, possessive, and domineering, his mood swings unpredictable and easily triggered by trivial matters. The strain in their marriage escalated to a point where Walter resorted to physical violence against his wife. In late 2019, the authorities first became aware of the Baumann family due to a domestic violence incident. However, the case was swiftly closed when the couple informed the social worker of their reconciliation. Despite this outward resolution, the animosity between Ekaterina and Walter persisted, marked by frequent verbal altercations, sometimes even in the presence of their child. Walter secretly documented these arguments, taking photos and videos of Ekaterina and recording their phone conversations. He even solicited a computer technician acquaintance to hack into his wife's phone, a request that was refused. Walter accused Ekaterina of being a neglectful mother and mentally unstable, while Ekaterina countered by accusing Walter of losing interest in her, being consumed by his work, and suffering from burnout. Unable to endure the constant stress and fear, she sought help from a domestic violence support center in the fall of 2020. Following Ekaterina and their daughter's departure, Walter exerted every effort to win them back. He made promises of change, acknowledged his wrongdoings, and professed his inability to live without them. Consequently, Ekaterina, hoping for a genuine transformation, forgave him and returned home with their daughter. However, the respite from conflict was short-lived. Each time Walter recognized his mistreatment of his wife, he would attempt to atone with gifts or family outings. His behavior towards their daughter also underwent a significant shift characterized by absolute control. When at home, he insisted on his daughter being constantly within his sight. If they went out, he would not let her out of his arms, despite her being 3 years old at the time. He even halved his working hours at the port to dedicate more time to his daughter, personally taking her to and from kindergarten, preparing her meals, and having her sleep in the parents' bedroom at night. Those who knew Walter intimately painted a picture of a calculating individual with a flair for the dramatic. He possessed a knack for manipulation and was notoriously frugal, with money holding a central position in his life's priorities. He often exuded nervousness and impatience. Following Ekaterina's transition into motherhood, she made several trips to visit her family in Russia, each time accompanied by Walter. His presence was driven by a fear that his wife might choose to remain in Russia, thereby depriving him of access to their daughter. Ekaterina, witnessing her husband's increasingly abusive behavior, began to contemplate divorce. Simultaneously, she discovered that all her personal documents had vanished. As it later transpired, Walter had taken her papers and stored them at his mother's house. On one occasion, during a visit from Walter's mother, another heated argument erupted between the spouses, culminating in Ekaterina being forcibly ejected from their home, treated as if she were a discarded object. She sought police intervention, and the immediate situation was resolved. In another instance, a particularly intense quarrel between Ekaterina and Walter, occurring just before their daughter's kindergarten, prompted the kindergarten administration to notify youth support services. Consequently, the contentious couple was mandated to receive 6 weeks of child education support, with a family crisis counselor assigned to monitor the child's well-being. The counselor's professional assessment concluded that it was unsafe for the child to remain in the care of her parents. Ekaterina's continued cohabitation with her husband was solely for the sake of her daughter. However, returning to Russia with her daughter was not a straightforward option. German regulations required Walter's explicit consent for their child to leave the country. In August 2021, Ekaterina took her daughter away for a second time and sought refuge at a women's crisis center, informing the administration that her husband had threatened her life. Social services considered placing the 5-year-old girl in an orphanage, and the psychologist from the Youth Affairs Department characterized the situation as critical. Ekaterina reluctantly agreed to the Youth Affairs Service taking her daughter into foster care. However, Walter and his mother vehemently opposed this. As a result, both parents were required to share the child's care for a few days at a time, with the girl alternating between her father's residence and the women's shelter with her mother. A non-negotiable condition was that their daughter must attend kindergarten to learn German. Within a few weeks, the family was reunited once more. Some Russian sources reported that Ekaterina experienced difficulties with her roommates at the women's shelter and that the designated kindergarten was inconveniently far. Consequently, she returned home. However, by this point, divorce proceedings had commenced, and the spouses lived in separate rooms. Ekaterina's desire to return to Russia intensified. Walter did not object to this, but only on the condition that their daughter remained with him in Germany. Consequently, Ekaterina traveled to St. Petersburg alone at the transition between 2021 and 2022. While in Russia, she met a man online, a pilot from the Siberian city of Omsk, and they went on a date. Ekaterina returned to Germany in mid-January 2022 and maintained daily communication with the Russian pilot, exchanging numerous affectionate messages. However, just a few weeks after her return to Germany, specifically on February 4th, 2022, the 32-year-old woman ceased all contact with her family and her new romantic interest. An empty suitcase and 13,000 euros from her husband's hidden savings were the only items Ekaterina took with her when she left once again. Notably, she left behind her phone, keys, clothing, and, most significantly, her 5-year-old daughter. This was the account Walter provided to the police on February 6, 2022, after Ekaterina's parents, unable to reach her for 2 days, contacted German authorities requesting a welfare check. The entire city mobilized to search for Ekaterina. People scoured every possible area, posted flyers, and considered every possible scenario. One of the few individuals who appeared unconcerned by Ekaterina's disappearance was Walter. While worried citizens plastered flyers throughout the city, he was occupied with renovating his house. The worst was immediately suspected following the woman's disappearance, and her husband became the focal point of attention. The police searched the Baumann family's residence only 4 days after Ekaterina supposedly ran away. By this time, Walter had completed his renovations, painting the floors in the guest room and replacing a couch. He was also observed purchasing a large quantity of cleaning supplies at a local store. The police discovered that the surveillance footage from the house's video cameras had mysteriously vanished. Officers conducted a 3-hour search of the house for any evidence of a crime, leading a detection dog through the garage and the house itself. In the garage, the dog showed slight agitation but did not give a definitive signal. Initial forensic tests yielded no evidence within the house or the garage. In the cluttered car, the police found a knife and an electric shocker, which were seized as potential evidence. Officers noted Walter's conspicuous lack of concern regarding his missing wife. Instead, his primary interest seemed to be whether he would be granted sole custody of his 5-year-old daughter if his wife did not return. The search for Ekaterina continued day after day, but no trace of her was found. It was as if she had simply vanished. Officers recognized the extreme improbability of a young mother voluntarily abandoning her daughter, documents, and phone in a foreign country. Walter, with his statement about Ekaterina fleeing with an empty suitcase, became the primary focus of police suspicion. Ekaterina's enigmatic disappearance deeply troubled the city and beyond. Women who had never even met her organized search parties. 2 weeks after the young mother's disappearance, approximately 400 volunteers across northern Germany, aided by rescue dogs, searched for her in Bremerhaven on multiple occasions. The incident generated significant reaction on social media. Ekaterina's family drew attention to her disappearance in Russia, and the story was featured on major Russian news channels. On March 1st, 2022, 25 days after Ekaterina's disappearance, a wave of horrifying news rippled through Bremerhaven, then across the nation, and eventually reached Russia. A casual stroller along the local Weser River stumbled upon a peculiar suitcase that had washed ashore. Upon opening it, he was met with a gruesome sight: the dismembered remains of a woman, packed into garbage bags. Disturbingly, not all of her body parts were contained within the suitcase. Some were missing. Tragically, the victim was identified as 32-year-old Ekaterina Baumann. In a chilling coincidence, the suitcase was discovered near the very lighthouse where she had exchanged her wedding vows. The fact that the suitcase washed ashore proved to be a significant breakthrough for the investigation, as experts believed it could have easily drifted into the North Sea, leaving Ekaterina's disappearance an eternal mystery. The hopes of her relatives for a positive resolution to her enigmatic vanishing were shattered, replaced by the sorrow of bidding farewell to their beloved daughter, mother, and friend. The city's residents created a small, impromptu memorial, with locals deeply affected by the tragedy, leaving flowers, lighting candles, and even writing heartfelt letters. Following the discovery of the body, Walter Baumann was apprehended as the primary and sole suspect. The family residence underwent a second, more extensive search, with forensic experts meticulously examining the premises for several days. Inside, the police discovered a bottle containing a potent sedative, which was found in Ekaterina's bloodstream. They also found disposable gloves, foil, adhesive tapes, as well as a large quantity of garbage bags and cleaning supplies. Furthermore, canisters of acetic acid, solvents, and bleach, along with suitcase keys and the pink scarf Ekaterina wore at her last selfie, were found in the garage and shed. Investigators also noted the conspicuous absence of Ekaterina's personal belongings. The majority of her clothing had been discarded, and her wedding photograph, a memento of happier times, was concealed behind the piano. The police also located the white jacket Ekaterina wore in her final selfie, discarded in a trash container at the workplace of Ludmila Baumann, Walter's mother. While in custody, Walter frequently penned letters to his mother. These letters contained urgent pleas. The meaning behind these desperate appeals would only become clear 8 months later. Friday, February 4th, 2022, marked the last day of Ekaterina's life. At 4:30 p.m., she went for a brief 10-minute walk, captured on neighbors' video cameras wearing a light-colored jacket and yellow skirt. In the evening, the family shared a dinner of tuna, halibut, mashed potatoes, and olives, accompanied by a bottle of wine. According to Walter's account, Ekaterina consumed only 1 glass, while he finished the rest, leading him to go to sleep at 8 p.m. Court documents revealed that Ekaterina's phone last connected to the network at 7:41 p.m. At 8:25 p.m., she made a video call to her new lover from her computer, appearing to be in good spirits and promising to call him again after putting her child to bed. However, she did not make that call that evening, nor did she contact anyone else. 2 hours later, the Russian pilot sent her a good-night message, which remained unread. Forensic examination determined that Ekaterina died 2 hours after dinner, a conclusion supported by the analysis of her stomach contents. Forensic experts detected traces of strong sedatives and alcohol in her blood, and a fractured hyoid bone indicated the cause of death as strangulation. Experts concluded that the subsequent dismemberment of the body was performed using very sharp tools. The following morning, Walter briefly opened his car at 7:22 a.m. At 10:20 a.m., the car was driven away and returned at 4:49 p.m. 3 days later, Walter called his wife's phone, likely to reinforce his fabricated story of her running away. Before Ekaterina's disappearance, Walter and his mother had engaged in intense daily WhatsApp communication. However, after February 4th, a complete silence fell between them, a stark deviation from their usual pattern. In mid-February, Walter took his car to an auto service, requesting a thorough cleaning of the interior from top to bottom. On August 26, 2022, the trial commenced. The prosecutor argued that Walter had administered sedatives to his wife's drink and then, after she fell asleep, strangled her. The prosecution contended that Walter had premeditated the disposal of her body. The husband's fear of losing custody of his daughter in the event of a divorce, coupled with potential financial losses, was presented as the motive. It was also revealed that traces of blood were discovered in the garage, which Ekaterina's husband had attempted to clean based on internet advice. These bloodstains were found under a shelf, on the floor, on the stairs, and in the seams. Further traces of blood were found on the carpet in the trunk of his car. Despite the thorough cleaning efforts, forensic experts from the Institute of Forensic Medicine confirmed that the blood found in all these locations belonged to Ekaterina. Walter's phone and computer were seized by the police, providing crucial answers. Forensic experts found electrocution marks on Ekaterina's body, leading investigators to believe that Walter used the shocker to ascertain if his wife was still alive. In court, Walter wore his wedding ring and declared himself a widower. For 2 long months, he remained silent, offering no comment on the charges against him. Occasionally, during witness testimonies, he would plug his ears as if the proceedings were irrelevant to him. The most emotion he displayed was upon seeing his mother in the courtroom. He cried when she was questioned as a witness during her testimony. Ludmila Bauman shockingly confessed to taking Ekaterina's life. She recounted arriving at her son and daughter-in-law's house in the middle of the night in response to a call from her son, who asked her to care for her granddaughter. Upon arrival, she claimed to have found Ekaterina asleep on the couch. In Ludmila's version of events, she attempted to wake Ekaterina, shaking her. Ekaterina allegedly woke up and struck her in the face, initiating a fight during which Ludmila claimed to have choked her son's wife. She further stated that she was the one who dismembered Ekaterina's body. The question remained, was Ludmila the actual perpetrator? It was possible that her immense love for her son compelled her to take the blame for him. As previously mentioned, mother and son shared an exceptionally close bond. Despite her self-incriminating testimony, Ludmila left the courtroom a free woman that day and throughout the trial. The jury and the prosecution did not believe her statement, surmising that she was merely trying to shield her son. Even seasoned attorneys were stunned by the mother's confession. The attorney representing a 66-year-old woman demanded her arrest, while Walter's defense team called for his release. However, neither occurred. The mother remained free, and her son remained incarcerated. But Ludmila was not about to give up. She wrote another letter to the court, detailing her actions with the body. She requested to be questioned again and charged, but the court denied her request, unconvinced by her claims. Ludmila, however, managed to provide a crucial piece of information confirming her involvement. As previously mentioned, not all of Ekaterina's remains were found in the suitcase. Ludmila Bauman revealed the location of the missing fragment that did not fit. The information proved accurate, and the police discovered another weighted bag in the exact location Ludmila indicated. Furthermore, the pedometer on Ludmila's phone recorded that on the night of the murder, she walked 220 yards. Neighbors' video cameras near Walter and Ekaterina's house captured a person passing by at that time. The phone records of Walter's father also showed activity at that time. He had driven Ludmila to her son's house, despite telling investigators that he was asleep. Experts determined that Ekaterina was already deceased by this time, indicating that the 66-year-old woman was providing false testimony. Adding to the strangeness, Ludmila Bauman arrived at her son's house after Ekaterina was already dead and was present during the subsequent actions involving the body. Even if she did not directly participate in the dismemberment, she assisted in cleaning the house, essentially helping her son conceal evidence of the crime and acting as an accomplice. However, German law apparently operates differently in such cases, as Ludmila was neither arrested nor charged with any crime, a seemingly perplexing aspect of the case. As the day of the verdict drew nearer, the mother's attempts to save her son grew increasingly desperate. She penned another letter to the judge, once again asserting her guilt and Walter's innocence. In her account, she printed a suicide note in Ekaterina's name, intending to place it next to her body. She claimed to have laced juice with various drugs, giving it to her son without revealing its contents, but asking him to give it to his wife during dinner. Ludmila further stated that she came to her son's house to leave the fabricated farewell note, but Ekaterina woke up, forcing Ludmila to strangle her. However, the court remained unconvinced by the woman's confession, as all evidence pointed to her son as the perpetrator. Walter remained silent throughout the entire legal process. During one of the final hearings, he read from 230 pages of notes detailing his years in Kazakhstan, his life, and his love. Despite the extensive length of his statement, He only briefly touched upon the night that irrevocably changed everything, claiming he was asleep when his mother took his wife's life and dragged her into the garage. Walter blamed his mother for the horrific crime, accusing her of betrayal, manipulation, and causing his imprisonment. Perhaps the most chilling aspect of this entire tragedy is that it unfolded before the eyes of the couple's 5-year-old daughter. Currently, the Russian grandmother is prohibited from contacting her granddaughter, who is believed to be in German foster care. The girl is currently residing in a facility for traumatized children and has been given a new name to shield her from the story of her biological family. Svetlana is striving to gain guardianship of her granddaughter, but German authorities are denying her even phone contact. On May 23, 2023, the verdict was delivered. Katerina's daughter was 6 years old, and Walter Baumann received a life sentence. German law stipulates that he will be eligible for parole after 15 years. The urn containing Ekaterina's ashes was interred in her hometown of St. Petersburg. The case of Ludmila Baumann remains open, with the possibility of the prosecutor's office charging her as an accomplice, although no such action has been taken to